Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Datagaps webinar. I'm Pooja Gupta, Growth Marketing Manager at Datagaps, and I would like to thank you all for joining us today. As organizations scale their data and reports, manual testing can't keep up, leading to broken visuals, filter mismatches, and lost trust in insights. In today's webinar on ensuring uh, trust and accuracy in Power BI dashboards with Datagaps BI Validator, we will explore how Datagap's zero-code BI validator automates end-to-end Power BI testing from source to dashboard, ensuring accuracy, performance, and governance across environments. Let's dive in and see how you can deliver trusted insights at scale with Power BI. On the panel today, we have Anand Rao, VP of Marketing at Datagaps, and Subhanshu Dikshit, Senior Solution Architect at Datagaps. And with this, I hand this over to Anand and Subhanshu. Anand, stage is all yours.
Thank you, Pooja. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We want to make this presentation as interactive as possible, and we really appreciate you joining us today. And so welcome. So in this session, we'll show you how to keep your dashboards accurate, fast, using simple, repeatable tests. You'll see what usually breaks. You probably are well aware of that. How to catch these problems before the users do, and how to plug the tests into the whole release process. We'll keep the language good for both technical and business users, and finish with a short plan so that you can use in your workspace. So here's the agenda. We'll start by setting the context, why BI testing matters, the problems that we're trying to solve. And then we'll briefly talk about the core approach for Datagaps and some of the core capabilities that enable you to test Power BI. And then we'll look at some of the numbers, the return on investment in an automation suite such as Datagaps. And then Subhanshu here will do a live demo. He'll show you the regression test, the upgrade checks, the validation of measures, and some performance and stress tests that you could perform in an automation platform like ours. And then we'll conclude by looking at an implementation blueprint that you can take away from this. And at any point, if you have questions, please drop it in the chat window or the Q&A window, and we'll save space at the end for Q&A. So let's start with why business intelligence testing is important. So here I pulled some statistics that I came across. Most companies use more than one business intelligence tool. You probably have that as well. It could be Power BI along with Tableau or business objects or one of the other variety of other tools out there. So that variety makes it useful. You're de-risking across different vendors, but it also makes testing harder. So when you upgrade a BI tool or migrate to the cloud or change the data model, small differences can change numbers on a chart. Moving to the cloud will help with any kind of cost and uptime issues, but quality still depends on the testing. So the most common gap that we see is regression testing. So rechecking that nothing broke after a change. So many teams do a quick visual scan, but they don't verify the numbers or filters deeply. So that's how silent errors slip through. A KPI looks right, but uses the wrong filter. A chart changes after an upgrade. A time zone shift moves a date by 1 day. So all these are silent errors. And a test automation suite solves this with 4 pillars. The first is checks of the report to the database. So you're comparing the numbers on the dashboard to the same number from an approved SQL query. The second pillar is visual regression. So side by side comparisons of screenshots, highlighting the layout of the reports, the text, or any kind of drift in the values shown. The third pillar is filters and parameter matrices. So where you automatically click through several combinations of filters and slicers to confirm the result. And then the fourth pillar is performance tests. So you simulate real users to catch any slow pages before the release, tie all this into a CI/CD process and your collaboration tools, and you get repeatable quality tests, faster releases, and higher trust from the business users. So let's look at some of the cost savings. People who have moved, say, from Tableau to Power BI have reported 20% reduction in their BI expenses. There's been greater efficiency. Reports are produced 30% faster. And Power BI has been gaining market share. From the last report I read, it's at 14%. And then, of course, the rest of the market share is occupied by the other big players like Tableau and SAP Business Objects. And several customers who have done this migration, for example, a healthcare provider migrated 200 plus Tableau reports to Power BI, leading to lower costs, easier integration with the rest of the Microsoft tools. And you might be in that same bucket and gaining increased confidence and faster time to insight. And then a cybersecurity firm, for example, after a merger, moved 80 plus reports to Power BI for improved data flow. And the reports were delivered 30% faster with a 20% cost reduction. And so all these benefits will come, but you have to make sure that your migration is perfect and any kind of regressions do not happen. So speaking of validations, so dashboards fail in several small ways that cause headaches. A field is renamed, so a measure drops to zero. A time zone shift happens and dates move by 1 day. An upgrade changes the default number format. A data migration changes how a particular function behaves, so the totals no longer match what finance has produced. And then there's this whole the manual testing struggles, too many pages, too many filters, too many roles to cover. So you're converting each of these risks into an automated check. So you bind the metrics to the SQL truth. So any key KPIs, run the same calculation in the database, compare it to the visual with and without filters. You run pixel level checks, title of the report, legend, value, any kind of movement, you'll see instantly in the difference in images. And also you exercise all the filters, the parameters like a real user would. You choose the date range, the product segments, the currencies, and you confirm the outputs. So you can also would have to simulate multiple users to check the page load time, the interaction time, and you have to connect all these tests to your pipeline so that they run on every change, not just before a certain deadline. So each result should include evidence, which test failed, the screenshot highlighting the difference, the exact SQL used, links to the sample bad rows, and so on. So this turns, the numbers that seem to be a little off into a quick fixable issue instead of a week-long debate. So let's talk about why analytics validation is important. So there are four main areas: the trust, the speed, the cost, and the risk. So for the trust, different teams often see conflicting numbers. Version A of the report says one thing, version B says another thing. So this leads to confusion and executives start questioning the data itself. The second is speed and productivity. So analysts spend up fixing issues instead of finding the insights. So releases slow down, any last minute patches become routine. And then third is the cost creep. Without cleanup of the reports, extra compute cycles are needed, unused licenses are present because you're not decommissioning the old BI tool. Duplicate reports happen, resulting in increased spending. And finally, there's the whole risk and compliance aspect. So without clear rules or a proper audit trail, it's hard to track who changed what and when. So this is a big problem during audits. So in short, without a proper structure, every release pays a hidden data tax. So many people are doing this migration as part of a bigger modernization effort. And modernization efforts often mean three changes happen. First is a new data platform. For example, you might be migrating from SQL Server to Snowflake or Databricks in the cloud. And then second is you're updating the ETL or ELT pipelines. And third is you are refreshing the dashboards with a new BI tool. So each step can introduce drift. So data types change or rounding or join behavior, time zone rules, default filter settings. So the safest path is to validate the full chain. And the step one is to do a target table comparison. So to check the counts and the sums for key tables, run sample row level differences. So this proves to be the move that preserves the data. The second is the transformation validation. So you recompute important business rules independently, compare it to the pipeline's output. So this catches any business logic differences caused by this refactoring. The third is any kind of dashboard testing. So use the visual differences to spot layout or text changes and run the filter matrix to verify all the interactions. And you anchor the numbers with report to database checks so that people see the matches from the approved SQL. And then you run these plans in all your environments, development, test, production, and schedule these nightly runs while the migration is active. You send results to tickets and chat with a screenshot of what's off and the SQL that you've used. So the benefit is you have much calmer go lives, faster sign-offs, and more confidence to decommission the legacy systems, because now you have evidence that the data has moved correctly, the dashboards behave the same, and the performance meets the SLAs. So let's look at a few capabilities that Datagaps offers and the results that we have seen. So for those of you who are new to Datagaps, we focus on observing and validating the full data journey, right from data ingestion to consumption in your analytics platform. Our mission is to empower enterprises with trustworthy data, analytics, and AI. So we deliver this through the DataOps suite and end-to-end web platform that can be licensed with individual modules that you see there or as a bundle. So the core products are ETL Validator, BI Validator, the Data Quality Monitor, and Test Data Manager, which together automate the pipeline testing, the report to data reconciliation, the continuous data quality monitoring, and we also do synthetic data generation. So you can deploy the suite on-premise or in the cloud. It's fully contained behind your firewall. We never see or retain your data. We are built on Apache Spark. The platform can scale to billions of rows. So you can validate at production level volumes without any kind of sampling. And Datagaps is recognized by Gartner as a specialist in the data pipeline test automations category. And our credibility in BI testing is also proven. Two of the top 5 Tableau installations rely on Datagaps for BI testing. We are SOC 2 compliant and certified, and have been in business for more than 10 years, and we serve over 75 customers. So that's a little bit about us. And here are some test scenarios that our platform supports and that you should be thinking about. So first is, of course, the source checks, where you're confirming the right data is loaded and the extracts are fresh. The second is functional checks, where you enforce the business rules, no duplicates, valid formats, correct keys, required fields are present, etc. The third is the visual checks. So you detect the layout or any kind of text drift with pixel comparisons, pixel level. So cosmetic changes don't hide the value changes. And then you have the report to database checks, where you compare what the dashboard shows with an approved SQL query, including when the filters are applied. And then you have performance checks, where you can simulate user traffic, measure the load, the interaction time to protect the SLAs. Then you have security checks, where you confirm the right roles can see the right content. And these turn all these manual reviews into one governed process. So the platform as a whole is built for large data sizes as well as teams. It connects to the common platforms that everyone is migrating to: Snowflake, Databricks, Redshift, BigQuery, Oracle, SQL Server. Supports whatever file formats you have: CSV, Parquet. It has ability to use APIs. And we, of course, support all the many of the BI tools, including Tableau, Power BI, Oracle, etc. So the test can run where your data lives and scale using Spark, or you're using SQL pushdown to compare large tables quickly. The automation is first class. It runs on a schedule on every pull request. When something fails, we can open or update a ticket with the exact evidence needed to fix that. Security is built in. You can deploy behind your firewall, use your identity system, keep data under your control. And to speed up adoption, we ship some templates, starter templates. You can do upgrade checks, filter matrices, performance runs, so that you can customize and copy across different teams. So the results are easy to share with business users. One report lists what passed, what failed, screenshots of the differences, and the SQL behind the numbers. So this makes any kind of sign-off quick and objective. So the impact that we have seen when teams standardize testing, and one is faster release cycles, because the tests are reusable and they run unattended. Upgrades and releases move close to 50% faster. There are lower QA costs, and because analysts can focus on edge cases. There's higher trust and higher adoption. So when numbers match and the SQL and the pages load within the target, so you have business users adopting the platform much more, your BI platform. And you'll see fewer support tickets, because all the logic and the performance has been verified. And we have seen a large enterprise report around 25% drop in the overall BI tool total cost of ownership, because there's less rework, fewer incidents, and faster approvals. So here is the ROI of using a test automation. I put some numbers that we have seen from our customer engagements. Say you have 50 reports. Each report has 5 pages, and there are 3 tests per page. So you're talking about around 750 reports. You're taking almost 1 hour to build each of the test cases. Running them manually takes 30 minutes per test, and the automation run much faster. So you're around 6 minutes. And so if you test monthly, that's 12 runs every year. So the manual effort is 5,250 hours. The automated effort drops down to 1,650 hours. So I've assumed a $50 per hour rate that you pay your staff. And so the labor rate drops down from $262,000 to $83,000. And then, of course, you have to add the typical license costs, the setup and compute, and that total comes down to around 127,000. So the net effect is that you are seeing your total costs reduced by half. So you're seeing 52%. And then you have a great time savings, 70% of your time is reduced. And then the net effect is that, it's a 3x ROI in terms of the investment you spend on an automation platform. So this slide talks about Power BI specific capabilities that we offer. So one is the AI powered SQL and DAX assistant, where writing long complex queries in SQL or DAX can be slow and error prone. So Datagaps solves this by using an agentic AI assistant that writes and checks the code automatically. The next is Power BI Analyzer, which, as Power BI environments grow, because it's so popular, it becomes harder to track the performance, the usage, the governance. And so the analyzer provides visibility into how the reports are used. It optimizes the performance and ensures the environment stays secure and efficient. And then there's the measure consistency. So Datagaps uses generative AI to automatically find any inconsistencies across different measures. Instead of checking the formula manually, the AI speeds up the validation. And then there's the auto data lineage. The BI teams often struggle to understand where the data comes from, how it has moved, how it has changed. So generative AI creates a clear visual map from data source to transformation, improving the transparency and therefore the trust. And then there's source and target upgrade testing that ensures Power BI doesn't break any of your dashboards after the upgrade, and any kind of automated regression tests catch the issues early. And then there's this whole report integration. So as I said, many organizations have several different BI tools, and offering an integrated testing environment connects tools like Power BI and Tableau under one testing platform, giving teams a single place for quality checks. So a quick rundown on some of the customers that we have, adopted Datagaps. So here's a retail company. They faced major challenges in the analytics. It was a combination of different acquisitions. Each acquired company brought its own BI system, data warehouse, and tools. So this led to a lot of fragmentation and conflicting definitions of their KPIs. There was a lot of duplicate effort across teams. So executives often saw different results for the same measure, which completely eroded the trust in the reporting. So to address this, they created dedicated teams with clear accountability. They refactored the legacy reports. They consolidated overlapping metrics, built a unified catalog, validated this across the stakeholders. And at the data level, they introduced a central warehouse with flexible data marts on top to balance governance and agility. So the tool consolidation was critical. They reduced from 6 business intelligence tools down to 2 or 3, which simplified their management. And they adopted agile sprints and CI/CD pipelines so that QA testing can happen continuously. And the results they have seen are significant. They had 50% more productivity from the development team. They cut the tool cost by over 50% and cleaned up nearly 90 reports. So the overall impact is lower cost, stronger governance of your reports, and restored confidence in analytics. This is another customer of ours, a hospitality company, which is global, and they wanted tools to compare the data between Snowflake and Power BI. So before this automation, the QA team and the process was completely manual. The data team had to run tests, review the logs, check the dashboard one by one, and it took a lot of time and effort. And they had around 48 dashboards to verify, and the process became unsustainable. So comparing the data, they also had Dremio across Snowflake, and comparing the data through Dremio and Power BI was manual and slow. So checking each filter combination across multiple pages required manual steps. So to solve this, Datagaps implemented this automated monitoring pipelines that run on a schedule, send alerts whenever issues are detected. And there was also the cross-system data comparison between Dremio and Power BI. Remember the report to database checks that I mentioned. It's all automated at both the record and the KPI levels. The report filter validation happens automatically using the parameterized datasets. So these automated rule-level data flows run regularly for continuous QA coverage. So the hospitality company now operates 96 of these pipelines that are monitoring the data. And this is across 776 data flows across their 48 reports. And all this is done without manual testing. And so the QA cycles are much faster now, 70% faster. And there's greater trust in the accuracy of the data. And this has created a good foundation for enterprise-wide reporting. And the last customer is a pharma company that we worked with. And before the automation, the QA team at this pharma consulting company manually checked the KPI numbers across different dashboards and reports. The process took around 60 minutes per report, and this process was prone to any rounding errors and export errors. And there were more than 5 dashboards that this consulting company had, and it was 5 dashboards per client of theirs. So these checks consumed many hours each day. And also the filter validation was manual, and the bookmark validation. So these challenges slowed down the whole QA process and reduced the confidence in the data. So Datagaps automated the validation process. The system now checks the KPIs for consistency automatically across all dashboards, flags the mismatches. So instead of manually comparing the spreadsheet export, the tool runs rule-based checks at both the card and the detailed data level. So daily validation runs happen automatically without requiring the team's input, and all the filters are rotated dynamically so that the validation happens. So the result is, the QA turnaround time improved by about 70%, and the accuracy and governance improved across reports. So with that introduction, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague Subhanshu, who will do a live demo where you'll see many other things that I talked about. So Subhanshu, over to you.
Thanks a lot. Let me start by sharing my screen. Can I share my screen, please?
Oh, I have to. Okay, I'll stop presenting. Yeah. Okay, your video is turned off.
There we go. I assume you can see my screen now.
Yes, we can see it.
All right. So let's jump right into it. In today's demonstration, what we want to discuss specifically is the few use cases. In the next 10 to 15 minutes, I want to wrap up those specific use cases. We're going to start with the data side of validation, how our application is used to validate the BI reports, their KPIs, their exports, as well as their data model across multiple layers. Then we want to discuss visual regression level validation. After that, we want to discuss a bit more on the side of performance, and we want to introduce our latest feature of the BI analyzer as well. So of course, before I showcase the product, I would like to set the stage in defining what exactly we are trying to do within the product specifically. So let's take a quick look at that. Now, the first thing that you see on your screen here are the three set of layers from which data passes. This is your typical ETL pipeline after all. You have data coming in from multiple layers, being processed and pushed into a golden layer, eventually pushed into a BI report. Our current use case, the one we're going to focus in right now, will focus primarily on the fact that these corresponding numbers that we see within the BI report have to be validated. Do note there's an underlying data model here that we can discuss as well. But the main use case I would like to start with is the validation of these numbers itself. So let's take a look at that. For this, I'm going to open up a simple use case. And you'll see that our application is going to connect directly to the BI server itself. This is important for automatic test case execution as well as automatic test case generation. The key aspect here is, hey, how do we extract these numbers? It's as simple as clicking on visuals and fetching the numbers out. Now, one key aspect here is that the numbers that we are working with, especially the one that we have highlighted, are subject to filters and slicers. So if I apply a filter to this particular report, I see that the numbers have now been updated. This is kind of the crux of the application. We want to make sure that the numbers we are fetching from the BI reports are the numbers the end user sees. These numbers are, of course, affected by row-level security and filters and dynamic slicers. And the application has an entire dedicated section which is built on filter parameterization and filter combination generation, where the key aspect is instead of working with static values, you're going to reuse test cases across different filter parameters. That's a side tangent. Our main use case here is to ensure that the numbers we pick up from our BI report, as you see in this example, are validated. And so far in this particular node, what we have done is that we have extracted these numbers out. The process happens in real time in many cases, where we open up the report, we authenticate ourselves, and we wait for the report to be loaded in. We wait for filters and slicers to be applied. And then in this example, we're fetching the information as data sets. And that is what you see right here. As we see in this example, we're working with a data set, and it's pretty apt. Now, if you go back to our slides, there's one critical aspect. Our golden layer data might not be in the exact same format as it's expected in the corresponding reports. Obviously, there's some aggregation present there as well. So how do we deal with that? Well, the application helps you create this aggregation either by using the query builder directly to perform this, or it can provide this using the Copilot assistant. So what exactly is this Copilot? Well, a Copilot is our AI agent system that has the capabilities of connecting to your specific data model. So we can connect and create our very own data model on that particular front as well. And then either by using the raw files or the data model, create the aggregation for you as per queries. You'll see that in this example, I'm asking the Copilot to recreate a data set purely from the raw data. And this is pretty possible within the application, as we don't just provide this query to an AI agent, we provide it a lot of context, relations, business glossaries, and a ton more information like sample data is provided to the AI agent for it to create accurate queries which represent what we are trying to do within the application. And this is our crux of white box testing. We would like to replicate the transformation to be sure it's working correctly. Regardless of me working with Excel files or data sets, and regardless of me working with SQL aggregations or Scala aggregations or Python aggregations, since we have a ton of these applications present within our system, the key use case is that we extract this information and now we have the expected value, the source of truth from our golden layer. The only thing left after this point is to run a comparison between the two. This comparison node automatically maps the columns against one another, automatically takes care of your type conversion, can automatically scale up to billions of records as well as thousands of columns, and can run in parallel with other comparisons to ensure thorough validation. The end result, of course, is the application telling you crystal clearly if there are specific values which don't exactly match the system, or in this example, we've defined a threshold as well. So if the values are outside the expected threshold, the application captures them and tells that these are the values which are incorrect. Of course, just finding out the problems isn't the end of the story. you might have to do some post-validation process. And for that, we can raise Jira tickets. We can also save the mismatches in specific records for specific solutions. And we can do a ton more. The application is easily integrated with other systems as well, your test plans, your ticketing services, your notification systems. And we support a ton of these using our extensible plugins. But this, in an essence, is a particular test case, can be generated individually, node by node, or can be generated automatically using wizards. And once this particular test case is generated, it can be triggered automatically from your CI/CD systems. It can be triggered to run across multiple environments, and it can be triggered to run across multiple filter parameters. This kind of aspect is there to ensure that if you are looking for thorough validation, be it from a perspective of report data compare, or even from a cross BI perspective, the application supports that as well. And of course, every test case is going to have its corresponding run history, as well as a proper report that's automatically generated, which tells you exactly which reports what is the report you're working with, what is the comparison output, what happened after that, and so on and so forth. These are highly customizable reports, and the key aspect here is you can connect them to your existing BI reports as well. Continuing from this particular problem statement, the next thing that we want to discuss is on a data front itself, but let's discuss the data model aspect of it. So in this example, you'll see what I'm doing is I'm executing DAX queries within my system. And that's a possibility. Now, the real question comes in is why would we want to validate data models? Well, that's a multi-stage answer. After your golden layer, you could have the intermediate data model, which has or houses its very own aggregation logic. So that could be one reason. In this particular use case, what we are trying to illustrate is that we have a data model from prod and dev that we would like to compare. And in this example, I've gone one step further and stated that my data model in dev is from a SQL Server system. So I'm not using the traditional data model system. And so regardless of the comparison that I'm trying to work with, what I'm trying to ensure is that the numbers between my source and target match. And if there are missing records, if there are mismatches, those have to be notified and sent as a report back to me as an owner of this particular report, so I can work on them in that particular accordance. And you'll see in this particular test case, I'm running a validation of the data model. I'm also running the validation of the report, and I'll discuss this shortly. But to finish up our examples on what we are trying to achieve with this reconciliation and regression system is to keep track of our KPIs across multiple layers. Here we have a simple example which explores a particular use case where you might have files coming in say an ADLS location, which are shifted into a Databricks table, eventually into a Power BI report. Now, this particular use case is validating two things. It's validating if the transfer of data between ADLS and Databricks was correct, if there were any mismatches between them. And then it also ensures that the same data, once aggregated, does that match with the expected BI report. So there's a lot of different type of checks that we are doing within the single system. And while in this example, I'm working with ADLS Azure, do note that our application isn't limited to any of these. The application has a ton of support for a variety of sources, as you see on your screen. And from the application's perspective, all of the sources are treated in an agnostic manner. So for us, it's just a data set. Does not really matter. And for the end user as well, as you'll see, does not really change much in terms of what the end user has to work with. Of course, from a more, say, expanded perspective, you can really go all out and ensure that the values coming into your bronze layer are being kept track of between bronze, silver, gold, data model, as well as the BI report. So there's a lot of different types of validations. And here, as you can see, even if one validation has passed, if others have failed, this still indicates that the values you're working with are incorrect. And this doesn't even take into account the key factor that when we are running this test case, we can run it thoroughly across multiple systems, across, say, multiple filter combinations. So thus, we can ensure that values between a report and a data set are comparable. And while in this example, I'm working with report and data sets, do note that we can do this exact same thing between reports as well. One of the most famous examples that we deal with quite often now is a report to data compare between Tableau and Power BI. We have dedicated webinars for this, so we'll get into detail on that front. But critically, we do the exact same thing in both systems and run comparisons to ensure that the numbers between both Tableau and Power BI match. If they don't, we call that out as well. So that's the first kind of check that we would want to work into. Now let's move on to the next slide, which is regression and upgrade. So what is the main problem statement of regression and upgrade? We want to ensure that if we are upgrading from any one system to another, or if we want to compare two distinct, say, parallel systems, so it could be the same system, it could be parallel systems. Here you have a list of different types of scenarios where we believe this works in. What we critically want to do is that we want to run a comparison between these reports in visual positioning, visuals and generals. We want to ensure that the filters and slices you're working with, the definitions and their applications are in sync. And we also want to make sure any kind of color schemes, data changes, and numeric changes are something that we are capturing. All of this is part of our regression test. And how do we do this? Well, we can see it in the product itself now with visual compare, as you will see within the product, as well as textual and filter comparison. Let's take a look at this instead of the screenshots. So what we're looking at this point is something we call as a regression test, where we compare two sets of reports. Again, this can be the same report, one against the other, or it can be reports from parallel systems or different versions. And the three things that we're capturing here, as you can see, are visual changes between the reports, 3.1 million versus 3.3 million, and missing data as well. Along with this, we do textual compare between the reports, catching out any anomalies between, say, report A and report B in terms of the visual placement, the actual visuals, and everything in between. That's one other aspect to consider. Apart from that, we also keep track of the next system, which is, well, a summary of this. So when we are working with this particular application, the red blocks are very helpful, of course, but what you can also do is ask an AI system to summarize the changes so that as an end user, you get a proper written report telling you exactly what the differences are between the source and target, between the expected report versus the current report. Lots of different nuances. And the best part about this is that you can completely customize this. You can customize the prompts on which you want to define the differences, as well as use the differences that we come up with inherently. That's one check. What is the other check? Filter differences. So if there are filter differences in terms of the actual definition of the filter or filter values, for example, Europe getting converted to EU or anything like that, we're going to capture that as well. And finally, we do a bit of performance testing. This is very helpful because if your reports take much longer to load in, we as an application, we can find that out. So you will be alerted that a report is taking much longer to load in, say before and after an upgrade. And the best part about this is that there's a ton of customization that I'm skimming through in the interest of time. Customization where I can ignore certain sections of the report, customization in terms of filter value validation, and customization in terms of what kind of comparisons I'm looking for, including exactly how long of a difference in loading times is considered, say, not helpful. And this test case generation and for an entire dashboard is as simple as dragging and dropping reports. And for more info, we can always have a proper demo specific to your use case team as well. Let's move on. The next thing we want to quickly discuss, of course, is the fact of validation in terms of the report values. So here you see a critical failure, which is, again, the reports might take much longer to load in. And this could be exacerbated by the fact that multiple users are going to try to access this report. So there are two types of problems we are trying to solve. We're trying to ensure if the premium capacity that we've paid for, is that working in the expected range? Are we paying too much? Are we paying too little? And secondly, we also want to capture which visuals are causing these problems. This is what we're going to cover in performance testing. So let's take a quick look at that within the application itself. So this is the stress test that we are working with. I've selected a bunch of reports and I have a lot of options as seen in the previous slide to decide how I want to simulate this load. 500 users trying to access 20 reports at once for the span of 20 minutes, where I can monitor the BI server. And critically, as an end user, I can see the results right here, where at the end of this particular stress test, I get proper summaries, and I can do this live as well, but I get proper summaries telling me exactly what the open time is, what the filter application time is in average as well as in max, as well as the fact that the application can take screenshots of this particular system as well. So for every particular user who you want to access this particular report, they can run this particular stress test with different filter combinations. And rest assured, you have a proper audit page as well, along with a corresponding set of, say, SLAs, where you can see if a particular report is taking too long or if a particular user might not have access to a particular set of systems. I mean, this is something that you can also look for in terms of auditing, where if you want to, you can provide a user list and the application can use that user list to perform the stress test. So thus you will have a proper, say, screenshot summary where every user has performed, say, a lot of validations on every filter combination. So if there's something wrong with one particular user's, say, specifications or permissions, you will capture that here with the response codes and other systems present for you. So that is stress test. Apart from the key aspect on stress test, there's one more thing, and this is the final feature that we have added, which is BI catalog. So what exactly do we mean by BI catalog? Well, now that we have run a stress test on the application, we can also connect to the inherent Power BI system. And what do we do with this? Well, we're going to look at the dashboards, we're going to look at the data model information, and then we're going to do a visual analysis at a report level to tell you, say, from this particular visuals, which corresponding system has how much time to load. So if there's a particular report, how long does that take to load in? If there's a particular visual, what is the specific render time for that particular visual itself? And this is where our application comes full circle in terms of the validations that we are dealing with. Once again, this is the report that we are dealing here. And so what the application has is the underlying data model, where you can see the list of the tables, the list of used, unused columns, the list of relations which are missing and present. Along with that, we have a proper cardinality system where we keep track of the tables, how much size this table takes. If there are unused columns, how much size those corresponding unused columns take. So this is a lot of information for you to better optimize your report in that particular fashion. And the best part about this is that in visual analysis, while the application is going to tell you everything, here, as you can see, we can see the exact render time, both in terms of the browser render time as well as the background DAX query that is required to run for this particular visual. All that is present. And of course, along with that, we also see what specific columns are present to help you trace back where exactly this particular problem statement is arising from. So there's a lot of different aspects that the application has covered within this particular use case. But that's not it. To be honest, there's a lot more that the application does work with inherently. This includes validation of your reports, applying observability on your Power BI reports, making sure your data model is valid by running validation use cases with some transformation logic, with some mapping documents. And there's a ton more that the application offers in terms of integrations, scheduling, integrations with pipelines, CI/CD toolsets, and a lot more. But today we have time for this much itself. Now I'm going to hand this back to Anand to finish us off with some case studies and, of course, some Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Subhanshu. That was a great demo of all our capabilities. So I wanted to wrap up with a checklist that you can take, some conclusions that you can derive from this demo, as well as this presentation. So at a high level, you have to think about a framework, a testing framework for your testing your business intelligence environment. So as you think of this, especially at a scale of 50 reports or 100 reports where we have seen our customers. So you first start by listing the reports and the KPIs that matter the most to you, those tied to your goals, your targets, or any kind of compliance. You clean up the basics, the page layout, the labels, the filter names. So the choices are very clear. You check the data model, the table links, the hierarchies, the logic of the measures, and ensure that you reuse the same definition across the reports. You make sure the data sets and extracts are set up correctly. They refresh on time. So treat that initial list as your initial checklist. Next, you can check what users actually see for the key visuals that they're seeing. You write the SQL queries that computes the same metrics, compares it against the charts. You test it with the filters on or the filters off to find any kind of filter mistakes. You verify the report data matches the source and that extracts are fresh. You run the regression tests across your environments, development, test, production. And any kind of differences should have only come from the planned changes. And you save the proof, you screenshot the proof, and then the SQL results are available. So the audits and the fixes come quickly. And you finally, you protect the access, the logic, and the speed. So you test the role and group permissions. So each audience sees only what they should be seeing. You confirm the KPIs across your business rules and stay consistent across the reports. So, and then you can, as Subhanshu mentioned, you can measure the page load times, the click times under your realistic use cases. And if any test misses the target, you can tune that for tune the queries as well as the data sets. So this is a framework that you can use as you think about your BI testing strategy. So the conclusion is that you probably can take away is that you have 4 building blocks. The first is the report to database checks to anchor the visual to the SQL. You have visual differences to catch the layout and text differences. You have filter matrices to verify various interactions, and you have the performance tests to protect the SLAs. So you start small with probably one function or one domain. You wire the tests into a CI/CD process. You publish the results, and you can measure the release time. So expect your release time to be cut in half, your QA effort to be reduced 20-30%, and you have fewer support tickets. So as you get these results, you copy that approach to other teams, integrate it with your catalog and lineage tools, and then the end state is that people trust what you shipped, and it's available on a predictable schedule. So your call to action would be choose that KPI that matters, and you could even come to us. We could do a quick pilot. We could create some checks for you, and that's the QR code where you can request a demo, and we can take it from there. So with that, this is our contact. Pooja, we have around 5 minutes left, so we could open it up for some Q&A.
Sure. Yeah. Let's take them up quickly. Very first question is, how fast can we show value, and what early wins are realistic?
Yeah, that's the always first question that we get is that we can do the POC for you. So in a few weeks, you can baseline the key dashboards, start catching those regressions before they hit the users. So BI Validator automates those regression checks, compares the environment, dev, use, test, and production, validates the SQL, as well as validates the filters. So the trust and adoption rise when your review time drops. So you can also schedule email alerts and do all these steps so that you have these quick visible wins, and then you can enhance it from there.
Thanks. And next is, are there any limitations with integrations?
Yeah, so there are a few limitations, of course, and this completely depends on your environment and how your CI/CD process is configured, and your different data sources. So we definitely want to have a one-on-one conversation with you to understand your environment better and see if we are the right platform for your testing needs. So this would require like a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah. And Subhanshu, if you have anything else to add to it?
Yeah, the application is extensible as well. We make sure that we can run code within our application, and we can provide a front end for that custom code as well. Thus, if you're looking for specific integrations, as long as it has libraries and API toolsets to connect to it, our application has been proven successful to connecting to many of such toolsets, be it governance toolsets, ticketing services, or notification systems in the past.
Yeah,
sure.
Great.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Vanshu. Next is, how does it plug into CI/CD to speed releases and cut risks?
Yeah, so this is adding on to what Subhanshu just mentioned, where we're talking about different integrations. So there are a bunch of command line interface and REST APIs that Datagaps offers, and it can be integrated with your CI/CD tools like Jenkins, GitHub Actions, Azure pipelines, and you can run the tests on each publish. And the BI Validator handles any regression, performance, or access checks for different tools in your environment, including Power BI. So you can map it to all the DORA metrics for faster deployments, shorter lead time, and faster anomaly detection and resolution.
So, thanks. Next is, how do we keep privacy while still testing with realistic data?
Yeah. Privacy comes up a lot in our compliance use cases. So I didn't go into much detail on this particular tool. So we have another tool called the Test Data Manager that produces synthetic data and enables you to mask any kind of PII or PHI data. So it learns the patterns from the real data sets, and it creates safe, statistically similar records. So you can generate millions of such rows exported to formats like CSV or Parquet, and load it into your test database. And there you can use this data, as well as you can. This will also help with any kind of GDPR, HIPAA, or CCPA kind of compliance issues.
Great, thanks. Shubhanshu, would you like to add something to this?
No, I think one of the key aspects there is also a reminder of what Anand said at the very start, which is the application is within your infra. So that really takes care of compliance in most ways. But we also have a great amount of compliance and penetration testing and security compliance certifications that we keep up to mark with our product. That's another, and we are more than happy to have detailed discussions with specific clients if they have specific questions on that.
Great, thanks. Next is, I think we can take it as last question. What scale can the platform handle, and what makes that possible?
Yeah. So, the BI validator, as I mentioned, is useful when there's multiple BI tools in the environment and can handle cross-platform regression and performance testing. So, including simulating multiple concurrent user load, capturing the response time metrics. Subhanshu just showed the BI analyzer and the different metrics that are captured. These could be while applying the filters, the slicers, and any kind of bookmarks. And we can do it at scale continuously by integrating with all the CI/CD tools, and we can run these tests in parallel with our pipelines. So a lot of scalability built into the platform.
Right. Thanks, Anand. With this, I would like to thank our speakers for sharing such valuable insights on ensuring trust and accuracy in Power BI dashboards. And a big thank you to everyone who joined us today. With this, the closing statement, would you like to share, Anand, CTA?
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. We have certain assets that we have shared with you here on the webinar platform. Please download that. Hope those are useful to you. And if there's anything that we could help with, you can click here, schedule a session with us. You probably would meet Subhanshu again, who can customize his demo for you. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to doing business with you.
Thank you.